Rav Victor Nevinsal, Yeshivat Kotel, tells the story of a lady who was waiting for her flight at Ben Gurion Airport, and it was taking a while. There were some flight delays. She went into the store and bought herself a package of chocolate wafers or something, came back to her seat, opened the package, made the bracha, started to eat, and then she hears her name over the loudspeaker to come approach the counter for some issue or other. And in fact, she leaves her things, runs over to the counter, talks to the lady behind the counter. And when she comes back to her seat, she can't get over it. There's her seat, there's her things in the middle, and there's a man sitting now, a rather religious looking man sitting at the next seat, eating her package of wafers. So it's Israel. She figures this is the height of chutzpah. She goes to sit down in her seat, and she says, that's it. I'm teaching this kid a lesson. It was a yeshiva bacher or something. She reaches over to her package, puts her hand in, and takes out one of the wafers that this young man is holding. And he's staring back at her. And so he takes out a wafer and he eats it. She eats hers, and she's getting more and more hot under the collar. He doesn't care. He doesn't say he's sorry. He doesn't, not embarrassed. She takes another one. He's still looking at her. Righteous indignation rising within her. And she's figuring out that this is how it goes. This is a sense of entitlement. It's exactly why she can't stand Israelis. She can't stand being Israeli. She doesn't look, and you see, especially this guy looks like he learns in the yeshiva, has no respect. And she's thinking, maybe I should just tell him off. But she said, you know what? I'm just going to take another wafer. And so she does. She eats it. And this goes on until all the wafers are done. And the guy gets up and just walks away, shaking his head as if he's somehow the aggrieved party. But then they call the flight, and she gets in line, and she gets on the plane, finally puts all her things away, and takes her bag, instead of putting it on top, puts it under the seat, and on a lark opens the bag to put whatever was her boarding pass inside, and she finds her open package of wafers inside her bag. And Rav Nevinsal tells this story. Whether he actually knows this woman or not, I do not know. But he uses this as an example of the way in which we so easily jump to conclusions about situations that that confront us on a daily basis. As it turns out, this is not just going to be a talk about the importance of not jumping conclusions. As it turns out, Parshat Kedoshim includes within it a positive mitzvah, an affirmative commandment from Har Sinai, appearing in this parsha, to judge others favorably. We have a compendium of mitzvot at the beginning of Parshat Kedoshim. Rashi tells us right away that Melamed shenemar Parshat zu b'hakem pnei sherov gufei Torah tluyin ba. So many of the mainstays of the Torah and bodies of the Torah, whole realms of Jewish ritual observance, ethical observance, are found in this section. First, the aspiration to Kedusha, then to show reverence for parents, the admonition to keep Shabbat, not to worship idols, to make sure that offerings are offered in a certain way, an ethic of tzedakah, an agricultural setting. And mixed into all of these different mitzvot, of course, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, not to hate one's fellow in one's heart, all different kinds of mitzvot about rebuke and not hating or bearing grudges. We learn lo tasu avel b'mishpat, do no iniquity in justice. Lo tisa pnei dal, v'lo te'adar pnei gadol. Don't elevate the face, the appearance of the one who is, or give them a pass because they are indigent and appear before you. And do not show favor to the face of the one who is great, high, mighty, rich, whatever it is. B'tzedek tishpot amitecha. With righteousness shall you judge your nation, particularly your fellow. Rashi here explains, number one, kimashma'o, exactly as it says. So it means the pshat, the first layer, the most direct understanding of this pasuk, is that indeed a judge shall show no favoritism. Righteous judgment means not paying attention to who sits before you. Davar acher, a second understanding, hevei danet chavercha lekaf zichut, judge your fellow favorably. A positive commandment codified by our monei hamitzvot, The Gemara in Masechet Shavuot has both of these ideas lined up. That's where Rashi got the idea. One litigant before a judge may not be sitting and the other one standing. One gets to speak to their heart's content. The other is told, can you make it snappy? Davar acher, says the Gemara, but said tishpor amitecha, hevedan et chavercha lechaf zechut. Judge your fellow with righteousness, judge them favorably. Many of us know this statement, which was then taken from the Gemara and is codified also in Pirkei Avot under the ethical teachings, without realizing that it's actually an affirmative mitzvah in the 613 mitzvot. It's Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia, from the era of Yeshua ben Prachia, Nita Harbeli, who teaches Aseh lecha rav, uknei lecha chaver, make for yourself a rabbi, acquire for yourself a friend, vehevei danet kol ha'adam lekaf zechut. Judge a whole person in a meritorious manner. Rav Yisrael Meir Lau notes that it doesn't say judge every person favorably, but judge the whole person favorably. To be able to see things in a context, to be able to decide about someone whom you are meeting perhaps for the first time, that you don't know everything about them, to give them, as would sometimes be translated, the benefit of the doubt. The Rambam, in his commentary to this Mishnah, points out that if the person is not known to you, you don't know them to be righteous or wicked, and you see them doing some action or speaking in some way, if you have the option of translating, understanding, explicating that which they have said or done in a positive manner, or you could do it in a negative manner, parshehu katov. You are bidden from a halachic vantage point to choose the good side. Val tachshov bo ra, not to think ill of that other individual as the default. If you know the individual to be entirely righteous and to be someone of good deeds, all the more so, even if they do things that seem strange, to try to find a way to justify that which they do. And conversely, an individual who is wicked and known to be wicked, entirely wicked. So then an individual of that nature, even if they seem to be doing something good, you should judge them without favor because they already have some kind of established way of being. The trouble, of course, is that on all sides, this would seem to imply that we should put on rose-colored glasses and pretend that people who do things that don't sit well with us suddenly should be just wished away as probably in some naive reinterpretation in order to make good on Hevei Danet Kol Ha'adam L'chaf Zechut. Of course, there are limits to this, but the idea that a default that a person has when they encounter a new situation should not be cynical and jaundiced and negative, should not jump right away to figuring out the most negative story that could possibly be told about a circumstance. Rav Eliezer Malamed in his Sefer Pnei Halacha says that anything, even something that seems like it's good, if you have a jaundiced view, you'll turn to the negative. That fellow takes such good care of his parents. It's such a nice thing. Probably just wants the Yerusha, he wants the inheritance. Everything that a person sees with their eyes, we're left with a question without any preconceived notion about how we want to interpret it. Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch notes that there seems to be a contradiction in this pasuk between the Pshat and the Drash. The Pshat says, pay no attention to who stands before you. It's the facts of the case that matter. And the Al Shofet livchon rak et gufo shel ma'aseh, just what has happened. Imumatim onoged lemidat hatzedek. Justice is the only barometer that is to measure, the only measuring stick of what stands before the judge. But conversely, outside of the courtroom, the exact opposite principle is at play. Keneged Zeh writes further on, HaChavra, the society, me'unyenet be'ikar be'ishiyut uv'ofi, that cares about personality, cares about character, and an individual should be able to look in a certain manner. Midat hatzedek notenet, the attribute of justice lends itself to the judge looking blind with a blind eye at personality and seeing only the body of action that has transpired. V'otam midat tzedek, the same attribute of righteousness, says Rav Samson Farsh, shechevra tishkol et kol nesibot ha'efshariot, where the society is going to weigh out all the possible factors involved. Sheyesh ben l'lamed zechut al ishiyut ve'ofya. Everything here in the society should be instead about character, should be about personality. Think about the society in which we live today. Think about the way in which there is a rush to judgment, where everyone judges everyone else so quickly. A cancel culture that has become so prevalent that we wake up almost daily waiting to find out who's going to get the axe next for something they said or something they did, maybe 20 or 30 or 50 years ago. A world that measures generations in 2-year increments with the arrival of new iPhones and Androids, at the same time dredges up anything and everything and looks to it so often with such a jaundiced negative eye. May I ask you, does this not have an incredibly corrosive impact on us as Jewish people? It's not a nice idea to judge others favorably. It's a mitzvah min haTorah to judge others favorably. Again, not blank checks, not simply looking with rose-colored glasses. Does not mean that malfeasance should just be wiped away and excused or chalked up to a misunderstanding. Au contraire, we hold both elements at play at the same time. The context of the one is a court of law, and the context of the other is the realm of society. And of course, it doesn't mean a person lets down their guard or lets themselves become what you would call technically a shmata, or somehow looks askance at the possibility and the prospect of evil or wickedness. It simply means the default approach to phenomena is not looking to find a sense of putting each person in the dock and the bar of judgment and finding them wanting, but having a positive, optimistic attitude, particularly about others. Hevedanet kol ha'adam likaf zichut. The Gemara Masechet Shabbat tells us the following story to illustrate, and it's a bit of an extreme story, but as far as we know, it is actually an historical story. Maseh ba'adam echad sheyard megalil ha'elyon v'niskar etzel bal habayit echad b'darom shalosh shanim. A man who came from the Galilee, from the Galil, the Upper Galilee, and he was hired to work for a certain magnate who was in the south for 3 years. It was Erev Yom Kippur. The worker said to his boss, please give me my wages so I can go home and feed my wife and my children. The man said to his employee, Ein li ma'ot, I have no money. Asked the worker, Tein li peirot, then give me the fruits from these orchards. Amar lo, Ein li, I have none. Tein li karka, give me from the land that I've worked on, your land. He answered, Ein li. Tein li behema, give me animals. He said, Ein li, I have none. Tein li karim kasatot, I want pillows, blankets. Ein li. What did the man do, the worker? Hifshil kelav la'achorav halach lebeit b'pachei nefesh. The man put his rucksack behind his back and he went home dejected. After the holidays, after Sukkot, in one of the versions of this story, the Baal Habayit took everything that he was owed to this employee. He put it onto 3 donkeys, one of food, one of drink, and one of all kinds of delights. And he brought it to the man's house. After the 2 of them sat down to a repast, eating and drinking, he gave him all of his recompense. Amar lo, he said to him, this the employer, B'shasha amartali, tein li schari v'amarti ein li ma'ot b'mechashatani. When I said to you, I do not have any money to pay you, what did you suspect? Answered the employee, I thought maybe you have a business venture that has tied up all of your money and you have paid it out and you have nothing right now to give me. When I said I have no animals and you saw the animals before you, what did you think? Said the employee, I thought maybe you already hired them all out and therefore you're not able to conscionably give them to me because they've been rented by other people. And the land? Well, I thought maybe you had sold it off. And when I said I have no fruit in the orchards, I thought maybe you hadn't taken maser yet and you weren't going to be able to do that. And when I said I have no pillows and blankets, I thought maybe all of your property was mukdash la shamayim. You had given it to the temple treasury. And the man, the employer said, Ha'avodah, kachaya. That's exactly right. You got it right, he said to him. Hidarti kol nichsi. I gave away all of my wealth to the temple treasury. I didn't own anything. Why? because I have a son who doesn't learn Torah. And when I came to my to the different fellows that I have in the South at the end of Yom Tov, they were matir the neder for me. And now you, said the employer to the employee, Keshem shedantani lizchut, as you judged me favorably, hamakum yadinotcha lizchut. God should judge you favorably. In the version of this story in the Bavli, it doesn't give us the name of the person who is the employee. But if you look up the version of this in the Gaonic work, the Shiltut Rav Achai Gaon, the employee's name was Rabbi Akiva. Since this story took place before Rabbi Akiva was a Talmid Chacham, the Hamek She'ela, the Netziv writes in his commentary to that Shiltot, the Gemara did not want to include the name Rabbi Akiva. It would make him look bad that Nabuch, he was working and he couldn't even get paid. Such a great person. But if you think about the idea that it's Rabbi Akiva, you get a sense of what it means that an individual had such a view of others. An extreme story for sure. But Adan Chaver L'Kaf Zechut, Danino To Lizchut. A person who judges their friend favorably, so they'll be judged favorably as well. It gets paid forward, as it were, but also paid upward to Shamayim. Rav Yehuda Bar Shela, Rav Asim, Rabbi Yochanan, Shisha Dvarim, Adam Oche Protem B'Olam Hazeh, V'Karen Kim L'Olam Haba. 6 things the person eat the fruits of in this world, and yet the reward is held for them to the next world. And what are those 6? On this list of 6, the last one, V'Adan Chaveru L'Chav Zechut. You eat the fruits of judging others favorably. I imagine the reason for this is quite simply because an individual no longer lives looking at each and every person with such cynicism and a jaundiced tzedek, but instead can see the good in others and thereby not only fulfill a positive mitzvah, but build a positive society. Tzedek tishpot amitecha, and so may it be for us. Shabbat shalom.